and welcome to another booktube video from me, Lauren, from Lauren and the Books, and welcome to just eating some pasta. Q&A today, your burning bookish questions. I asked you on Instagram if you had any bookish questions that you wanted to ask me. I haven't done a Q&A in ages, and said if there was anything that you maybe thought was a bit risque. I mean, they're hardly risque, these questions, but like, or a bit maybe you hadn't wanted to ask me before. I just said, I've opened it all up, just ask me. And yeah, I got sort of, I've whittled it down to 10 questions. Quite a few of the questions were sort of repeats or a version of that question. So where I've done that. Where people have asked that, I've sort of made that into one question. The 10th question, which a lot of people asked me about, was about cozy reading night. So I'll keep you hanging and tell you at the end of the video when the next cozy reading night is, because there is one and it is soon. So we'll start with the first question. Real talk, how many unread books do you have on your shelves? These are my unread books. Guys, I counted, and I counted all the books that I had actual access to, because behind me here, down here, this chair's too heavy for me to move, there is a double stack, not just sort of like double stacked like this, double stacked as in behind it as well, set of books there. So everything I could get access to, 302 unread books. 302. But judging on how many there, it's probably more like 350. So that's how many unread books I've got. And now I'm thinking, have I even counted the books that I've got on my TBR this month? I don't think I have. So yeah, it's about, I would say about 350. So the next question sort of links in with that, and that is, where do you keep all the books that you read? Your bookcase space does not seem to have grown. So yeah, these are my bookcases here. They're 1, 2, 3, 4 high. I've got 2 of them. These are from IKEA. They were here when we moved in, and they've discontinued them because I would have probably, I mean, they've discontinued them, but it's probably a good idea because I would have probably put another one there, which would have given me more bookish. Yeah, but I don't need it. I don't need another one there. So yeah, and so there's 4 shelves worth, and then on the top, which you can sort of just see the spines here, are my favourites books. So they're read books. So they're the books that I've read and I've loved and I'm hanging on to. They go up there into sort of like bookish heaven. But these are all mainly unread books. So sometimes there will be a read book on here. So for example, I'm looking at The Bass Rock by Evie Wilde, because that's a book that I read and I liked. Dusty. And I think maybe I'll revisit that at some point. But, oh God, it's all falling to bits. These shelves really need tidying. And they do, yeah, so that's a book that I've read and I'll maybe revisit, and I really enjoyed it, but it wasn't one of my favourite of all time books. Similarly with series, I don't always want to get rid of the series of books, in case, especially if they're ongoing series, as I'll want to reread them before the next series comes up. So the Book of Dust series, I've got one here and one somewhere else there, because there's another book of that to come out. So yeah, so read books, once I've read them, if I don't absolutely love them, they're staying up there and they're amazing. They go sort of like to a number of places really. If I can think of somebody that I think will enjoy them, I pass them on to that person, and I've always got a sort of cupboard by my front door, so if people are leaving, I'm like, take a little peek in the cupboard. If there's any books in there you want, have a little look. So I give them to friends, family, colleagues. David's mum and dad are going on holiday soon, and David's dad was like, you got any books that I can read on holiday? So I'll have a look through that bookish sort of cupboard and be like, oh, I think you'll like this, and I think you'll like this. They also go to charity shops. There's a charity desk at work where I take things as well. But more recently, I've sort of tasked my father this summer with making a community library around where I live, and I've seen these sort of all over the place, but there've been a few popping up recently around here, little sort of like wooden huts or places where you can put books and people can just browse them. And yeah, I'm gonna get my dad to make me one of those little wooden huts, hopefully this summer if he pulls his finger out. And I'll be putting some books in there as well, because I'd love to sort of give them on to people who would like to read them. So yeah, that's why this doesn't ever really grow. This does really grow because I'm double packed. That's why my read books doesn't ever really grow. And actually last year I had a little rethink about my favourite shelf and what deserves to be on there still. And actually that's a lie, because although these are all favourites, I've also got cloth bound classics up here. I'm pointing up here, you can't see, which are half of which I haven't read. So yeah, but that's where my read books go. Number 3 is, what book do you hate that everyone else loves or has raved about or has given 5 stars to? A lot of people ask me a version of this question. The main one I was thinking about, and I was thinking about books that I've hated that people have loved, and when I say people, I sort of mean like BookTube and people who comment on my videos, and that's the video that I've got the most sort of like backlash from, and that was My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante, which is the first in the Neapolitan series, about two girls that are friends living in Italy. Yeah, and I just, to be honest, I found the whole thing like a bit of a drag, a bit boring. I read it, well, I was trying to think when I read it, but I remember the video where I filmed it. I was in the flat we lived in before here, and we've been here like almost 4 years, so it's at least 4 years ago. And yeah, the whole book, like this book is absolutely beloved. So many people love it. So many people claim it's their so many people say it's their favourite book ever. I found it boring. I didn't really like either of the characters. That doesn't necessarily mean that I'm not going to enjoy the book, because a lot of the books that I read, I don't always love the characters. I found it like just a bit mean and dry. I didn't like the writing style very much, and yeah, it sort of was everywhere for a period of time. I remember seeing it in like everyone's book hauls, everyone's wrap-ups, even out in life. I remember seeing it like at the train station and on the front desk of every single bookshop that I went into and stuff like that, and yeah, it just didn't do anything for me. And in the video where I review it, I remember so many people had commented underneath being like, well, you obviously don't get it then. And like people were unhappy with me that I didn't like it. So that is the main one that I can think of. Another book that similarly I find like in the same vein as I found it, can you hear Minnie meowing? I found it like a drag and just a bit boring, was The Book Thief by Marcus Zuzak, which not necessarily hasn't had like a moment on BookTube, but I know a lot of people say that it's their favourite book and it's a very good book, but it's very big and very boring, I thought, and like a lot of sort of investment for I'm not getting much back. And then the last one I can think of is the Marie Kondo book, so like the sort of like The Art of Tidying. I can't remember the actual name of these books, but she's a Japanese woman who specialises in making things tidy, and I remember reading that and just like scoffing at it the whole way through. Some of the tips she had. Someone who, like, David and I live in mess, like not like unbearable mess. Mess is probably like just sort of untidiness, I guess, we live in. It's not unfunctionable. There's not stuff on the floor and stuff like that, she says, looking at her hot water bottle on the floor over there and my slippers down here. But like we're not really super tidy people. But some of the tips she was giving I just found absolutely absurd. Like two of the main ones that stick out to me. The first one being like, don't have any books in your home. Tear out the pages from the books that you love, of the parts that you love, and stick them in a book, and then you can just keep one book. And another one was, don't leave your shampoos and conditioners out on the side of the bath because they'll be less effective. And there's literally like no evidence for that at all. So yeah, I remember finding that like, ugh, but a lot of people love that as well. So there we go. There's 3 of them that I loved. Number 4 is, do you feel pressure to read because other booktubers are reading more, or do you feel competitive to read more than other booktubers? And I think this is probably a personality type for me, because there is literally not a competitive bone in my body. Like, I have no interest in sort of winning things, or like even sort of placing on things, and that stands for all sorts of things, like whether like at work or board games, or sort of like when I'm doing park run and stuff like that. It's just not my thing. Like me just being, and that's not to say I don't take pride in my work and the things that I do, but I'm just not a competitive person. I just really sort of enjoy stats and stuff like that, so I quite like doing park run and seeing, oh, have I got a bit better, or I was a bit worse that week and things like that, but I've just got no sort of competitiveness in my body at all. So yeah, I don't feel competitive to read more books than other booktubers. However, that's not to say that I don't feel pressure to read, but it's not based on like what other booktubers are reading or anything like that. It's based on like, oh well, I really want to read all of the Women's Prize long list before May starts, which is when I want David to pick my TBR, or like there's always some sort of like bookish project I've got going on, or particularly like in the run up to December when I want to read all Christmas books in December. I'm like, oh, I've got to wrap up everything before, I've got to finish all the books that I'm reading before I start my Christmas reading, and like, oh, I want to read my new books in January. So there's always something going on. So it's pressure created from myself, not from other booktubers. But that's not to say that I've also had conversations with booktubers who feel very competitive about reading as much as other people, and very much pressurised by seeing how much other people are reading. So my personal thing is that I don't feel competitive about it, but I feel pressure put on by myself because I've got all these sort of bookish pipe dreams in my mind of projects and TBRs and readathons I want to do and things like that. So yeah, that's the answer to that question. Number 5 is, what are your thoughts so far on not giving star ratings this year? So over on my Instagram, I'm at Lauren and the Books over there if you'd like to go and follow me over there. I review every book that I finish on my Instagram stories, and I've done this for a few years now. And previously I put a little picture of the book, what number book it is that I've read this year and how many stars I give it, and I've done that for years. And then towards the end of last year I was finding it really hard to attribute star ratings to books. I find giving a book a star rating sort of quite reductive and being like, oh well, that was a 2-star book, and then but what does that really mean to anyone apart from me? Like, I would get people saying, oh, I can't believe you've given like their favourite book a 3-star, and I was like, well, 3 stars is good. 3 stars means I liked it. Like, but I was finding it hard, and I was also finding it hard because things were changing. So I might rate something as a 3-star book, and then the more I thought about it, or if I spoke about it, I'd think, oh, actually, that's a 4-star book, or oh, actually, I didn't enjoy it. That hasn't stayed with me as long as I thought it was. So I thought this year I wouldn't do those star ratings, and also I haven't been mentioning star ratings in my reviews on here either. What I'd been doing instead of that on Instagram was picking 3 words that sort of described the reading experience for me, or things that are in the book, or things that it made me feel and stuff like that. I've enjoyed doing that. I don't know how helpful it is to other people, so if you are somebody who follows my Instagram reviews, do let me know how that feels. I was thinking maybe I need to make one of the words like how it made me feel, one of the words about the book, like, I don't know, I just feel like there's not much sort of continuity there, because all of the books, so let's have a look at the last few books I've read and what the words that I've used to describe them, and if that's helpful, because I'm not thinking about these words as I'm typing them. Right, okay, so the last book that I've read and reviewed was Ruth Ozeki's The Book of Form and Emptiness, and the words I've used to describe it is objects, voices and layers. So the reason I gave those words is because the book itself is about a young lad who's, following the death of his father, he starts hearing voices from inanimate objects in his home and out and about. So that's where the words objects and voices come from. And then layers was that there was lots of sort of like reading books within this book. So like it was sort of like you had a character who'd be reading a book, and then you'd get an excerpt of that book. So it's sort of layers within the books, which felt like something that I kept noticing when I was reading it, so I used the word layers, but I don't know how helpful that would be to another. Let's take another example. What else have we got? I'm trying to scroll through. Oh, the final revival of Opal and Nev, and that was, both of these are women's prize fiction books. The 3 words I gave for that were musicians, oral history, which obviously isn't a word, one word, and then I've also put bit boring question mark. So this is a book about 2 musicians, Opal and Nev, and it's their oral history. So it's sort of performed, think a little bit like Daisy Jones and the Six, where it's almost like a script, and you're hearing about their early lives and how they got together, and then a big event that happens in this book, which has a lot of sort of context for the rest of the book. And yeah, sadly I found it a bit boring, so that's where that came from. So yeah, it's going okay and I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying not having to pick star ratings. Some people still message me and say, what would you give this as a star rating? Which is something I did say at the beginning of the year. If you wanted to know what the star rating was, message me and I'd give you that star rating. Yeah, it's fine. I don't know how helpful those words are, so I'll be interested to hear from you guys. Number 6 is, do you DNF books or carry on until the bitter end? So DNF is did not finish, and there's a sort of sub question to this, which is it fair to rate a book if you DNF it? So I now DNF books. There's not enough time in the world to be slogging your way through a book that you're not enjoying. I used to give it to 50 pages, but more recently I've been like, I'm just not feeling this. Sometimes I think, I'm just not feeling this. Am I going to feel this another time? So I would put it like sort of on the back burner. But quite often I think, nah, I'm not gonna do that. It doesn't happen like as much as other booktubers. I know a lot of people like DNF quite a lot of books. DNA, that's work. But yeah, I think I'm quite good at sort of picking what books that I'm gonna enjoy and what books I'm gonna get something from. So yeah, it doesn't happen quite as much as it used to. But I guess the only time I would finish a book that I'm really not enjoying is if I'm reading it for a book club. I run 2 book clubs, so I feel like it's not really fair to be like, oh, we're discussing this book but I didn't even finish it. So I would always sort of force myself through those books. But the sub question of, is it fair to rate a book if you did not finish it? I don't rate books if I don't finish them. I used to log them on my Instagram as like, this is a book and I didn't finish it and these are the reasons, but I haven't even done that anymore. But yeah, for me, I wouldn't rate a book unless I'd DNF'd it, but I know some people who use sort of Goodreads and stuff to log their reading, use like 1 star to denote that something has been DNF'd. So yeah, I don't think it's fair to rate a book if you haven't finished it. That's my fault. Number 7 is, why do people like to watch hauls? I don't want to hear about books you haven't read. I thought this was a really interesting question because I've been doing this now for, God, I don't even know. Like, and we must be coming up for like 8 years, I think. I need to have a look. I think it might be 8 years in May. And still, the videos that get the most views are book hauls. They're not videos that I love to watch other people. My favourite videos I love watching on BookTube are reading reviews and like reading wrap-ups, particularly done in the style that Emma from Drinking by My Shelf does, balancing the books, things like that. Reading vlogs, love watching that, sort of like live stuff, like as you're reading a book and being like, oh, I've just finished this book and this is what I thought. Things like that. TBRs, I really like seeing people talk about TBRs, which I guess are a little bit like a haul. But yeah, I watch hauls, but I don't think, oh yes, great, someone's got a haul out, I'm gonna watch that. But my haul videos are always the videos with the most views. So yeah, it does feel weird to be like, why are people watching so many book videos about books that people haven't read? One thing I will say though is that it's a good way to get, particularly if people get sent books from the publishers, to be like, oh well, that must be coming out soon. And I like to sort of be like, these are the books that I've got this month. So I enjoy filming hauls. To be honest, I enjoy filming them because they're quite easy to film because I don't know much about the books, so we're sort of discovering them together. So yeah, I don't know why people like to watch hauls so much. I watch them, but I don't watch them as much as, they're not like, I wouldn't see someone had uploaded a haul and watch that instantly, whereas I would if I'd have seen someone uploaded a specified vlog for something. So yeah, I wonder, if you are a lover of watching book hauls, please do let us know down below why you like watching book hauls so much. Number 8 is, do you ever spend time not reading any books? This is a sort of question that a lot of people have asked me. So a lot of people said, like, as soon as you finish a book, do you pick up another book, or do you ever not read for a couple of days and things like that? So the answer is, like, I would never go a day without reading something. Like, that is always the way, even if it's just sort of like of an evening brushing my teeth, I'd always pick up a book to do that. There's not much sort of dead time in my life. I'm always doing, if I'm doing something that I could be reading while that's happening, I do that. So like drying my hair, brushing my teeth, in the bath, on the loo, waiting for something, if David's putting petrol in the car, I'm in the book, in there reading. So there's always some sort of reading going on. If I was reading a book and I finished it while I was in bed at night, I'd think, oh, I'll pick a book tomorrow. Like, that's probably the only time that I wouldn't think I'd start another book. But I mean, that's normal, isn't it? But then that being said, I've always got a audiobook on the go as well, so I've normally got like a couple of books on the go at the same time. Hiccup. So yeah, I guess the answer is, do you ever spend time not reading books? No. I don't. There's always something on the go. Yeah, there's always something on the go. Sort of realised that now. And then number 9 is, you can only pick one that is most important to you: writing, plot, or characters. I think, like, oh god, it's hard. Right, let me talk you through my thought process on this, and I will come up with an answer to this question. So I love a plotty book when I've read a sort of slower book that's maybe more of a character study or more of a beautiful writing book. So there's always a time and place for these sort of like plotty books, which I consider to be sort of like thrillers and stuff like that. Crime books, very plotty, like cliffhanger endings and things like that. And I've got a lot of time for those books, and they always provide me much entertainment. The writing though, I mean, at the moment I'm reading The Great Circle and I keep finding little bits in there which I'm just loving. So that, I think maybe I enjoy the writing when I'm in it more. I never think, oh, I want to read a really beautifully written book. But if I'm reading a beautifully written book, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm really enjoying that. So yeah, I don't think writing is the most important thing to me, so let's get rid of writing. So plot, I've said plotty, but characters, like, they're the things that bond me to books, I think. Like, when I think about what happens in a book, I think about the characters more. So if I'm recalling a book that I've read a couple of years ago, I would think more about the characters in that book than I would about the plot itself. So I think I'm gonna go characters. So that's how I've whittled that down. But please tell me again in the comments what you would pick out of writing, plot or characters, because I think it's a very, very interesting question. And then the last question is, when is the next Cozy Reading Night? So many people, Cozy Reading Night, when's Cozy Reading Night? When's Cozy Reading Night? The next Cozy Reading Night, guys, it's soon, it's next week, it's next Friday, the 1st of April, between the hours of 7 PM till 10 PM BST. So if you are new around here and you've never joined in with a Cozy Reading Night before, welcome. Cozy Reading Nights are something that I run seasonally, whereby it's a 3-hour session, and it runs in, well, you can run it in the time zone that you're in, that runs alongside my time zone, or you can run it at any time. And I just encourage people to get cozy, pick a favourite book, or just pick a book and some snacks and a blanket and a candle, or if you're in a hotter place, like a nice cold drink or etc. And I've been vlogging these for years and things like that, but this particular one is going to be a live show on this here YouTube channel. So David and I will be going live on Friday the 1st of April at 7 PM, and we'll be reading and stuff like that. So I'm not going to be doing a TBR for the specific thing. However, my TBR for the month of April goes up on the 1st of April, and I'll be talking about then what book I plan to read. Something else that's similarly exciting is that weekend I'm going to be filming a reading vlog where David reads a book in a weekend, which is something that he's never done before, and I'm going to read whenever he reads. So my reading is going to be sort of dictated when he's reading, and his challenge is to read a book in a weekend. I'm not going to say what book that is, but it's a book that David could manage in a weekend, I think. So yeah, so there'll be that going on alongside. So yeah, Friday the 1st of April, between the hours of 7 PM till 10 PM BST. Yeah, come along to the live show, but you can also get active on Instagram and Twitter using the hashtag Cozy Reading Night. So yeah, thanks if you submitted a bookish question. Hope you found these interesting. And yeah, if I've said, I mean, feel free to answer all of these questions below, but I'm excited to hear your thoughts on like book hauls and what you prefer out of writing, plot or characters. Very, very interested. And I'll see you all again soon for another booktube video. Goodbye!